Welcome to the Punting is Winning podcast. Just two fans talking all things Hawkeyes. Here are your hosts, JD and Keith.
Welcome back, Hawkeye fans, to another episode of Punting is Winning, your All Iowa podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Keith. He's JD. Welcome back to another week of summer. Again, not much going on with the world of Iowa athletics, so looking for content to fill in here. So we thought we'd do little predictions this week, or Big Ten predictions this week. But first, let's talk a little bit about question of the week from last week. We asked what rivalries are the can't-miss rivalries in your opinion. We went through ours. Did have some responses. Basically, one person said anything with Iowa in it is a can't miss, which, I mean, that's kind of a given. I'm not going to miss an Iowa game for another game. I'm not going to, I wouldn't forego an Iowa game to watch Ohio State, Michigan even. But then on the national scene, did have Alabama, Georgia was one, Ohio State, Michigan, obviously. And I think we had Auburn, Alabama in there, and possibly USC, UCLA was in there as well. So kind of the ones that people don't want to miss. I mean, they're kind of the traditional rivals. And, the Ohio State, or not Ohio State, the UCLA, USC game. The one thing I like about that is the fact that both teams get to wear the darks. That's kind of a nice idea and a nice touch. Because technically neither team is technically the home team. I mean, there is a home team, but I don't know. It just seems like neither team has the home field advantage because obviously the fan support for both teams is not that great right now. So, but yeah, that's always a fun one to watch just because of the uniforms. I mean, I know that sounds very cliche-ish to say, oh, well, I watch it because of uniforms, but that is kind of a cool concept to let them let each team wear their home uniforms. Hey, Shiloh.
Yeah, I got visitors today. So the other one's over here too. He's running around the background.
Oh yeah, I see that.
Mama's not home, so Daddy's got to watch the kids.
I see. Yeah. I'm sure they're good. They'll be good.
They're pretty good usually. I can't complain too much.
Well, get on to a new question of the week for next week. Not really a whole lot to talk about as far as what's going on. So we thought, what running back do you think will have the most rushing yards this year for Iowa? Because it kind of sounds like might be a running back by committee type of thing this year. We won't necessarily the speculation is that we won't see like a Caleb Johnson emerging like we did last year. That could change very easily. It could be, I've heard really good things about Terrell Washington Jr., how he's really stepped up. Obviously, we know what we get with Kamari Moulton. I think the X factor in that is Jazz Patterson. I just don't know, is he getting passed up, or is it just the fact that there's so much talent there that it's difficult, even though he's talented, difficult to give him the amount of carries? I foresee this being a situation where multiple guys get multiple carries. And even a Nathan McNeil could get a bulk of carries on a game. Just whoever's got the hot hand.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like you just said, if Kamari Moulton comes out and he's hot the first, he's running 6, 8, 7 yards per carry, and he's really tearing it up, finding the holes, doing a really good job. Then you ride that hot hand. If it becomes a situation where he's not hitting the holes correctly or he's not reading things correctly, you come in with Jazzy Patterson, see how he does, and you just work your way down from there, and you just you do it by committee, so to speak, like you said. But yeah, I think you ride the hot hand. We've done that for years. Iowa's always kind of gone to a situation where one guy's hot, they stay with him, and why wouldn't you? I guess at this point. So,
and it could be, defensive scheme could predicate who gets in there more. It could be, you got something where they're shut down the outside. You got somebody that's more of a downhill runner up between the tackles. That might be more of a Jazz Patterson or a Xavier Williams type of person. Or you need somebody who can do both, and that's more of a Kamari Moulton or a Nathan McNeil. Or you need a guy that's more of that can flare out a lot more, and that's more your Terrell Washington. So, it's just, I think the matchup is going to dictate who gets the bulk of the carries, and again, who's hot as well. If you've got a guy that's going out there, regardless of the type of defense that's being thrown against him, he's still running for 5, 6, 7 yards of carry. You're going to ride that. I don't care what you do. You're going to ride that horse until that horse drops, probably.
And certain situations may dictate that you need to throw your best running back with your best hands out there so he can catch a pass out of the backfield, or he can go out on run a route himself on a wheel route or something similar to that. And at that point, since Terrell Washington Jr. was basically a split end last year, more or less, you would assume that he would have the best hands of the group. But you could, if they're all good, then you can use them independently of each other. Same play, just use different guys. There's a lot of opportunity there to change it up and throw different looks at the defense.
Yeah, and the fact that you can throw a second running back out there and run him and flank him out in the slot gives you that end around option where, I like the end around with a wide receiver because of the speed aspect of it, but I also like the end around aspect of it with a hybrid running back, just because they have that truck stick hit miss ability, or whatever, however you want to look at it. It's the ability to juke, or because they're natural runners over receivers, then it's more natural for them to maybe turn a corner and put a move on a guy than it would be for maybe a wide receiver or something.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things too I like about it is because you can put run 3 different receivers out there, or running backs, and you can put them in different positions. That way the defense just can't key on certain personnel and say, I think we're going to do this, or I think they're going to do that, because of what they see in front of them as far as personnel. You don't want to be, you don't want the other team to key on personnel changes. If they key on certain personnel changes and they see, well, they only run a certain play with this person at this position,
right?
Then you know what it's going to be. So flipping them back and forth and putting different guys in different positions is really going to keep them off key and off balance. They won't know what's coming at them. They won't be able to key on personnel. So that's another thing.
Yeah, and I think that's where Iowa has been a little bit more predictable over the past few years, and I think was less predictable last year. I think there was still some predictability there, just based on the fact that you had guys that were in the system, or this is a first year in the system, so you kind of went with what you felt good with, and sometimes that would tip your hand a little bit in certain situations. And I think that's stuff we saw maybe with like a Michigan State or a UCLA who keyed on some of that stuff, or it could have just been the simple fact that they had fast and athletic linebackers that could keep up, that weren't the traditional Big Ten type of linebacker, more hybrid safety linebackers. Mm-hmm. And that allowed them to plug those holes quicker. Because, UCLA on paper is not a better team than Iowa. Michigan State on paper was not a better team than Iowa last year. But the scheme and what we saw out there made a difference. And I think the speed had a lot to do with that, at least from the edge rushers and from the linebacker position. The lack of a passing game really doesn't help much either. So if you can get that shored up where you actually have at least some semblance of a throwing game and can keep a defense more honest, I think that's, obviously that's going to benefit Iowa in the long run. That's kind of the statement of the day, but that's just the reality of it. And I think with Gronowski, if he's what we expect him to be, I think that's the step that Iowa takes this year. And I think that's why when you get to my predictions, I think that's why you'll see that I'm a little more optimistic, just because I think that that's going to happen. And I think that takes some pressure off of the defense and takes some pressure off the offense to be less predictable and more comfortable, and have that passing game makes just a huge difference.
To me, the most important thing for this season, and it's a number one, and as far as it should be a number one for about everybody, you got to keep Gronowski healthy. He's got to stay in the games. He's got to be healthy. You cannot let him get smoke from the side. You can't let him get hurt. You absolutely have to keep him upright and in the games. or I don't know that we have a really quality backup that we know of. There could be one back there that we haven't seen. Hank Brown, we've never seen Hank Brown. I've never seen him in an Iowa uniform anyway. I think that's the key is to Iowa season. Whether they go 9-3 or whether they go 6-6 is dependent on Gronowski's health. I know that's another duh statement of the day.
I agree. And, I think the quarterback room is probably in, from the backup position, is probably in just about as good a shape as it was last year with Sullivan. So,
but you've got Gronowski here, and then you've got everybody else.
Right.
I mean, it's
no, there's no doubt about that. But I think if you had to go to your backup, we're looking at similar production to what you had last year, which wasn't great, but still won some games.
But one of the things
better than running Deacon Hill out there.
Well, yeah, that's a no-brainer. But one of the things that we haven't seen though, and we're still kind of speculating on, is the fact that our backup last year was Brennan Sullivan. He's not on the team this year. So the other backup was, they call him Shaggy. But he's probably going to be third or fourth. Jackson Stratton, yes. He's going to be third or fourth on the depth chart. So, we don't, there's a lot of unknown commodities at this point for what they can do. The only one that's the only quarterback on the team that's had any Iowa snaps, to be honest, is Jackson Stratton. Is anybody else? I mean, Hank Brown hasn't seen a snap in Iowa uniform, and beyond Jackson Stratton, they haven't either.
I think when you go into the summer and into the first game, I think the depth chart is going to probably be Gronowski, Hank Brown, and then Hecklinski.
Oh, Hecklinski, okay.
Just because I think that that relationship with Ruggiero helps him. Coming from a system where he's already been coaching him, it's going to be a lot easier of a transition for him. Does that mean that he's better than Stratton? I don't know. It's just I think from a talent aspect, he probably has a higher ceiling. So he's probably going to get more of an opportunity, so to speak.
I agree with that.
And that's not taking anything away from Jimmy Sullivan either. He's just a freshman. And his turn will come. It's just, I don't think it's yet. But we'll see.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns. Hopefully that they get straightened out really quickly and we don't have to talk about this down the line.
Well, let's jump over to a little bit of basketball. Just seeing a few things on some social media stuff. Guys that have kind of stood out a little bit in the practices from what people have said. Not saying that they will be major contributors. Some of these guys probably won't be major contributors this year, but have shown that they belong, let's say. Trevin Jarek is one of them that from all things that I've read, it sounds like he is better than anticipated. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean, well, this guy's going to come in and play 20, 25 minutes and be all freshman Big Ten this year. No, I'm still thinking if he's in, it's probably situational due to fouls, or potentially we just need a big body out there because there's somebody just bullying the 6'9" guys. Another guy that I've heard has been shooting the ball well is Brendan Housen. Don't know if that means he's been fully cleared with full practice abilities yet. I know he'd been nursing a soft tissue injury and was basically day-to-day, but from all indications he is every bit of the 40% three-point shooter that we expected. And Alvaro Folgeras, I hope I'm saying that right, playing for the Spanish national team, had a rough first game, but has picked it up since. And his last game, I believe, 28 points, 17 boards, 9 assists. Darn near triple-double. I take that any day in the Big Ten.
Sounds like good stats as long as he's not playing the Sisters of the Poor.
Well, you just never know when you get into the international play which teams are any good and which ones aren't. But it's still basketball. You still got to put the ball in the hole, and He did that and was shooting at a much higher percentage. Don't quote me on this, but I want to say that game he was 7 of 11 from the field, and maybe 3 of 3 from three, perhaps. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to go back and look at the stats, but very good stats on the game, and something to be optimistic about. Again, I don't know the level of competition they were playing, but like I said, 28 and 17. That you still got to be pretty good to be able to do that, even against moderately to moderately poor competition.
Those are some pretty good numbers either way.
Yeah, and dish out 9 assists. I mean, so you're not just out there shooting the ball all the time or whatever. You're feeding your teammates, and they're putting the ball in the basket as well. So
yeah,
good things. I think
1 assist away from a triple double.
Yes,
those are not easy to come by.
So those are the things I've heard out of the basketball side. Haven't really heard much on the women's side, other than just some of the younger girls taking a bit more of a leadership role.
Taylor Strimlow,
vocal. I think Taylor Strimlow is one of them.
I think she was actually appointed captain of the team or something similar to that.
Well, good.
Yeah, that's good.
And the other thing I've heard is Emily Rodriguez is very, very good. Kind of might be one of the steals out of the portal. So
love to hear it.
Things to be optimistic about there. And I've seen some very good things about, or heard some very good things about Layla Hayes and her ability. Just how much bigger she is than you would expect her to be. So that's good. 6'5" and having somebody that can be a disruption down low. That's great to have. And I think you could, you pair her, you rotate her with Ava Hayden. I think Ava's probably a little bit more offensively skilled.
Polished, yeah.
Polished, yeah. But I from all indications, it sounds like they're very comparable to each other.
Good. Need a good solid backup for her.
Yeah.
Somebody can come in.
Split minutes and given a chance for Hannah to actually work on being a 4 instead of a 5.
One of the things that's really exciting for me is that when I've been going through some of the social media and seeing, the pages from Facebook and that highlight the Iowa girls basketball women's basketball team, is that Iowa is in on a lot of really high talented high school girls that they've offered and they're getting visits from. So that is an encouraging aspect of the Jen Jensen era. She's going out and trying for these girls. And I'm not saying Lisa Bluter didn't do that. She certainly did. She got Caitlin Clark when she would have pretty easily gone to Notre Dame. She actually admitted that she would have gone to Notre Dame, but she stayed home. And, all kudos to Lisa to get her to sign and come to Iowa. And it's nice to see, just like on the men's team, shoot for the stars and see where it comes out.
Yeah, and you say that, it makes me think about the fact that, Iowa, the men's team is in on some pretty high level talent as well that we're not used to seeing us be. I don't want to say we weren't in on some high level talent with Fran. It's just, you just never felt good about it because you just knew, well, we're going to end up being a bridesmaid. There's not going to be able to close the deal. And you just got a different feeling about it right now. The Cottrell Harmon kid, I got a good feeling about him. And that's something that when you list the 6 schools that he's down to, I would have looked at that. If that was Fran, I'd have looked at it and said, well, we're out. Thanks for giving us a cup of coffee or whatever, but there's no way we're competing against these teams.
We feel the same way as fans. We just looked at those and saw 6 schools and thought, well, unless they're Central Michigan and Western Michigan and then Miami of Ohio or Ball State or something like that in front of us, I think then at that point you think pretty good. But if it's anything of any, quality Power 4 team, you just kind of went, yeah, I wonder who's going to get him, not us. I can almost guarantee you. But now you feel like, there's a chance and, you're a little more excited about the opportunity and the potential of getting someone like that.
Yeah. I'm excited about the whole of the basketball season. And,
we should be.
The first year is going to really, I think it's going to dictate how the recruiting is going to go. if there's, and I'm not saying that if Iowa goes out and goes 17-15, that, oh, well, that's the recruiting is going to fall off. I think people are going to see that as, hey, he took basically a Division II recruited class and got him 17 wins in a Big Ten conference team. The sky's the limit when he starts getting in better talent. And I'm not saying that the talent that he brought in is bad. Because clearly they won 31 games. Most of those guys won 31 games at Drake and beat some quality teams in the process. It's not like they just beat up on Missouri Valley teams.
Right.
No, they beat some. Wasn't a
Kansas
great
State.
Miami team this year.
They beat Kansas State, Miami, and they beat Missouri in the tournament. They beat Vanderbilt too.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not like they were all sisters of the poor. It's a Missouri Valley Conference schedule, and there's some decent teams in the Valley, but it's not like a Big Ten conference or a Big 12 or
that's pretty much a
ACC
league,
type
though.
of thing.
That's a one bid league for the most part.
It's a definite step down, but you still had to win those games, and he won 31 of them. So, and he did it with guys that he brought from a D2 school in most cases. So clearly can coach. I think that's, people are going to see that there's potential there. I kind of like that second year of Kirk Ferentz's tenure. Well, yeah, Iowa only went 3-9, but you could see the trend. You could see the upward trajectory of that team, of that coaching staff as well. And you just could see that there was brimming with potential, because they were getting better every week. May not have been winning every game or been winning some of those games. They were getting better week to week, and you could see it. And that's the thing that we've missed about an Iowa team in basketball is they tend to regress as the season goes on in most cases. Now, that's not always the case. There have been times where they've peaked at the end of the year and gotten hot or whatever, but typically over the last 15 years, the back half of the year has not been the most kind. So I'm excited. Looking forward to it. Can't wait to get a chance to watch them out there against real competition.
I did see that they're going to play Mississippi in a tournament, opening round of a tournament.
Some Acrisure.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. That's on the 25th, I think, of November, which I don't remember. Is that prior to Thanksgiving or is that the weekend of Thanksgiving? I don't remember. I didn't look that up, but I saw that. One of the other things I'd like to talk about real quick, we'll go back to football, is Big Ten Media Day starts tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. The Big Ten commissioner will speak, and then they'll have 6 coaches from 6 different teams that will talk about their team in the upcoming year. Unfortunately, if you want to watch Iowa, you have to wait till Thursday. They will have Kirk Ferentz and the 3 guys there at 11:30 on Thursday. So they're on the 3rd day, but they are the number one the one very top of the list on Thursday. So a number 1 there.
Yeah, that's not to say that there won't be off the side interviews with the players and the coaches up until that point, but that's the official press conference or official spring media day speech, so to speak, right. I guess, of Kirk Ferentz. So
yeah.
Looking forward to that. I'm
I'll
sure
probably
it's going
watch
to be
all
much
of them.
the same as it has been in the last few years. We got a potential to be a good team, but we need we need players to. We need those special stories to happen, and I think we could probably write the script that.
I'm probably the most interested. I'm most interested in watching Kurt Signetti again. Last year, he was like, "We're going to come in, we're going to win the league, and we're going to do this, that, and they had a pretty good year." And I thought first, I go, "You smug SOB coming in here into a brand new conference that you've never coached in, and you're telling us that you're going to do all this, that, and the other." And then he went out and backed it up, and I'm like, "Man, respect to you, buddy. You did what you said you were going to do, and I want to see what he's going to do this year."
I think that's going to be a little bit more difficult this year to do.
Yeah. I think people are going to be
that's a good segue into
for him.
Good segue into what we were wanting to do this week. Kind of wanted to go through the Big Ten schedule and our predictions, which are never good, never right, just kind of what we think. So I thought we'd go ahead and throw this up on the screen. We'll start with yours, and I'll let you talk about them, and then I'll jump over to mine as well, and I'll go from there. So let me pull this up. All right. So let's start with yours here. Do you want to just start with Illinois and kind of go
Sure.
through, or however you want to do it?
Sure. I got Illinois at 10-2. I think they're going to be better than what people think. Their schedule's not terrible. I think their biggest game is like USC, and they have it at home. They do play Indiana on the road, and they do have Ohio State at home, but that they will probably lose to Indiana and Ohio State. That's the two I have them losing to. They do go to Washington. I think that's going to be a tussle. That's a 50-50 game, but I did have them. I flipped a coin and I had them winning, so I'm leaving them there. The rest of the games they should win. I mean, Rutgers, they'll beat Rutgers. They'll beat Maryland. Both of those are home. Wisconsin away, I'm not sold on Wisconsin this year. Northwestern at home, yeah. I think their three biggest games, obviously Indiana, USC, and Ohio State. Maybe Washington if you throw that in there. And that's it. Really, I think the rest of their schedule is pretty lax. It's not great. Go to Indiana. I got them at 9-3. I do have them losing to Iowa and Oregon and Penn State. I have them beat Michigan State, UCLA, Wisconsin, and I have them beating Illinois, as we talked about. Here's the one that I toiled and troubled over the whole time I was doing this is Iowa. I was between 8-4 and 7-5. I went with the 7-5. I think they beat Albany. They lose to Iowa State, beat UMass. I think they take care of Rutgers on the road. I think they actually do beat Indiana, give Indiana one of their 3 losses. I think they beat Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's a dumpster fire, and I believe that at the end of the year they will be looking for a new coach. Yeah, lost to Penn State, beat Minnesota, as we always do. It's a home game. Lose to Oregon, lose to USC because that's a West Coast game, and they don't do well on the West Coast. I think Michigan State's too athletic. I think they just do what they did last year on Iowa. I don't think Iowa's got an answer. And I think they beat Nebraska again by 3, probably. Maryland, I think Maryland's going to be terrible this year. I think they're going to beat Florida Atlantic and Towson, lose the rest. Michigan 8-4, beat New Mexico. They do play Oklahoma, and it's an away game. I don't think they win that one. If it was at Michigan, I'd probably give them the benefit of the doubt, but it's not. Central Michigan are going to win. I think they're actually going to lose to Nebraska. I think Nebraska is going to get them this year. Beat Wisconsin, lose to USC on the road. Beat Washington, Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, and then lose at the end to Ohio State. Michigan State, basically they're going to win their pre-conference season games. I think they lose at USC. I think they lose at Nebraska. I think they actually beat UCLA at home. They lose to Indiana on the road. They beat Michigan, or they lose to Michigan at home. And then Minnesota's a win. Penn State's a loss. Iowa's a win for them, and Maryland's a win. I don't see much going on there. 7-5, that was better than what they finished last year. I think they're building. So Michigan State, I look for them to have a better year. 7-5, they may be 8-4 yet even. Minnesota 7-5, they're breaking into quarterback. I don't see much out of them. I think they lose to California in their away game in the preseason, Big Ten season. Rutgers is a win. I think Ohio State's a loss. They beat Purdue. I think they beat Nebraska. It's at home. They lose to Iowa, Michigan State, Oregon, lose, and then go ahead and beat Northwestern Wisconsin for the axe at the end. Nebraska, I got them at 7-5. They go out strong and finish terrible. They only win after the first several games. It's Northwestern. They do win that, but they lose to Minnesota, USC, UCLA, Penn State, and Iowa by 3, of course, at the end, like they always do.
13-10.
Yep, or 17-14. Okay, Northwestern. I don't think Northwestern's got a very good season going this year. I do think they beat Purdue, and they beat Louisiana Monroe and Western Illinois. I think they even lose to Tulane on the road. I don't know why they would play Tulane on the road, but whoever scheduled that, not great.
Well, that's interesting because that could very easily be Brendan Sullivan starting against them.
Could be. That would be a story in itself.
Although they did just get a transfer from BYU, so.
Yeah. Can you adjust that up a little bit for me so I can get the rest of that? Okay, perfect. Ohio State. I toiled over Ohio State. I had them at one point going 12-0. And I thought, no, they'll stub their toe somewhere. So I got them losing to Texas in the opening game. Then I had them running the table, including a win over Michigan on the road at Michigan. I think they get them this year. I don't think Michigan's going to get them this year. I just don't see it. Of course, I didn't see it last year, and it happened, but we'll see. Oregon also 11-1. I see their only loss would be at Penn State. I think they beat everybody else on their schedule. I think Oregon's one of the class of the outfit. I think there's 3 really, really good quality teams that are capable of running the table potentially. Penn State's another one. Only loss was to be Ohio State on the road. That's the only loss I see. I think those 3 teams, and it'll come down to a tiebreaker as to who the 2 are that are going to play in the championship game.
Well, I don't think it comes down to a tiebreaker because Ohio State would be undefeated in the conference.
Okay, there you go. So Ohio State would be playing either Oregon or Penn State. One of those 2. Purdue, 2-10, win the first 2 out of conference games and then don't win. And I don't see them. Their defense is not good. Their offense might be somewhat decent, but if their defense can't get them keep the other team out of the end zone, then it's going to be a poor season. Rutgers at 5-7. They win their 3 out of conference games. They lose to Iowa, Minnesota, Washington, Oregon. They beat Purdue and Maryland and lose the rest, 5-7. UCLA, I've also got them at 5-7. I got them losing to Utah. I think they beat UNLV on the road. Then Mexico and Northwestern are wins. Maryland's a win. Nebraska's a win. And they lose to Penn State, Michigan State, Indiana, Ohio State, Washington, and USC. Then you got USC. I've got them at 9-3. I like them a lot more than a lot of the other teams for some reason. I just think that they always have a decent squad. They're always going to be quick. I have them winning their first 4 games and then losing to Illinois on the road. I got Michigan as a win for them. That could go either way. Notre Dame is a loss on the road. I got them beat Nebraska, and beating Northwestern and Iowa at home. Losing to Oregon on the road and beating UCLA at home. Finally, the last 2, I got Washington at 8-4. And I toiled over them on 7-5 a couple of different ways, but I ended up going with 8-4. Colorado State, UC Davis, and Washington State. That was the game that I debated on, was Washington State, because that's always, no matter how they end up in the season, that seems like that's always a game where it goes back and forth. But I got them winning, losing to Ohio State, losing to Michigan, losing to Illinois, and losing to Oregon. That's respectable, 8-4. Wisconsin, I am not sold on Wisconsin. I think they'll be, like I said before, I think the coach is on the hot seat, and I don't think it's going to get any cooler.
They got a brutal
yeah, they do.
schedule.
They do have a brutal. I was going to say their schedule is probably as rough as anybody's. I mean, you look at Alabama, you got at Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, Oregon, Washington, Indiana, Illinois, and Minnesota at the end of the season. That's murderer's row right there. That is a rough stretch, especially that Iowa, Ohio State, Oregon, and Washington, and then you've got to follow that up with Indiana. Oh, Lord. And then Illinois. That's a rough one. So that's how I've got it. I've got Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State being the class of the outfit, and a lot of teams at 7-5 and 5-7. I don't even know. Do I have anybody at 6-6? I don't think I have anybody at 6-6. So that's how I've got them going. I've also proven last year that I don't know what I'm talking about. So if you're a betting man, do not take this advice. In fact, if you're probably smart, you take the opposite. But we'll go with that anyway. Those are what I thought. That's my predictions. I'm not going to dwell on anything in particular because I think it's kind of silly to do at this point. If I redo this after the first week or 2 and see how everybody, it might be different. Just to do the ones that played.
Who knows?
It'd be interesting.
Yeah. All right, let's jump over to mine here. All right. So we'll start with Illinois. I've got Illinois at 9-3. I think they are losing at Wisconsin. Yes, I know that that's a murderer's row, but I just feel like that's a letdown game after they got some, that's a pretty weak back end of the schedule. Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, Northwestern. I don't see them winning all those for some reason. I don't know. I see them losing at Washington, but that's probably kind of one of those that could be a toss-up too. Ohio State, losing at home against Ohio State, that's nothing to be ashamed of. Going to Indiana, I have Indiana at 8-4. I think they have a rough stretch to start their season with Illinois, Iowa, and Oregon. Then they right the ship until they play Penn State, and then they close out with a couple of wins. So they're better than these teams. The Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland, Wisconsin, Purdue. You could say that the Illinois and the Iowa game are potentially toss-up games. The Illinois maybe more than the Iowa game just because it's at home for them. I think the Iowa game being at Iowa City is a bigger factor. So we'll go with 8-4 with them. We go to Iowa. I have Iowa at 9-3, losing to Penn State, Iowa State, which I'm still not sold on that being a loss, and USC. I actually have Iowa beating Oregon because I think that's going to be at 11 o'clock game and it's going to be an early game, and I think Iowa gets them because of that. If it was a later game, or if it's a later game in the afternoon, that's probably a loss. And if it's out west, it's definitely a loss. That's the reason why I went with a loss at USC as well, because they just don't play very well on the West Coast. It's proven, and but we'll go with 9-3. I think they could be anywhere from 7-5 to 10-2. But like I said last week, this is the type of year that the expectations are lower, so they're going to surprise people. So hopefully I'm right. I'd hope to be 9-3 would be a bottom, and maybe winning that Iowa State game and being 10-2 and potentially a fringe playoff team. We'll see. Maryland, I'm kind of with you. I'm not sold on Maryland. I have them beating UCLA. Don't know why, just because I didn't feel like they were going to go over in the conference. And that's the only game I could really see them possibly winning. I don't see them beating Rutgers at Rutgers. Their schedule is fairly brutal. Maybe they catch Wisconsin early, but I'm going to say 4-8 for them. Going on to Michigan, I'm Michigan 8-4. I have them losing at Oklahoma, at USC. I have them losing to Michigan State. I think that because that in-state border battle is kind of like the Iowa State. Doesn't necessarily matter which team's better on paper. I think that being at Michigan State is an advantage. And then I have them losing versus Ohio State this year, because I think this is a year Ohio State beats them. Michigan State, I have it 6-6. I think, yes, you're right. They've probably taken a little bit of a step forward, but I think they're going to get tripped up because I think Aiden Childs is going to get hurt. And I think that's going to hurt them. I think they lose at USC, at Nebraska, at Indiana, at Iowa, and home against Penn State. So basically, they're not going to win a road game. Oh, maybe at Minnesota, I see that. I got them beating Minnesota at Minnesota. I'm just not sold on Minnesota yet either, but I have them at 8-4. At Minnesota, I think losing to Ohio State, Iowa, Michigan State, and Oregon. The rest of the schedule is very manageable. Having Nebraska at home is an advantage for them. I think had that been at Lincoln, maybe it's a different story. But I'll go 8-4 with them. Nebraska, I have 7-5. Have them losing versus Michigan, Minnesota, UCLA, Penn State, and Iowa. The only reason why I have them losing against UCLA is it's at UCLA, and again, that's that West Coast thing. If it's, strange things happen when Midwest teams and East Coast teams go west. So I have them at 7-5. Northwestern, 3-9. Again, like you, I think they're losing to Tulane. They beat Western Illinois, Louisiana Monroe, and Purdue. I think that's exactly the same schedule that you had, or same results as you had. I don't see it changing. Ohio State, I have at 10-2. And a case can be made for an 11-1. A case can be made for 12-0. I just think playing Texas, the first game of the year, with Texas having a pretty established quarterback and Ohio State breaking in a new quarterback, is going to be advantage Texas. Um, I just think Penn State is just the cream of the crop in the conference this year. That's why I have them losing against Penn State. But I have them winning the rest. Oregon, again, losing to Penn State at Penn State because that's going to be the whiteout game, I'm sure. It's going to be a night game. It's going to be hectic. It's going to be crazy. I also have them losing at Iowa if that game is played in the morning. Again, that's prefaced by saying if it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon or an evening game, forget it. We're probably going to lose that game. I just think that the advantage is at Iowa early in the day because West Coast teams typically don't play as well in the morning. So it's kind of like the Midwest teams going west don't play well. So that's where I give Iowa the advantage. That could change completely. And if that does, then I see them as 11-1. Penn State, I don't like saying that they'll go undefeated because I don't think they will. But based on others, I kind of had no choice but to give them a 12-0. I don't know that I believe that that's going to happen. Ohio State and Oregon are basically both toss-up games. But again, if that Oregon game is in the evening as a whiteout game, I think that's Penn State's going to win that. And the Ohio State, it's at Ohio State. That potentially could be a 50-50 toss-up game. So if you're missing, if you're missing between a 10-2 Ohio State and a 12-0 Penn State because of that game, making them both 11-1, that's pretty spot on because that's probably a toss-up game. All right, so moving on. Purdue, I have them one game better than last year. Same as you, winning the first two and losing everything else. Just not a good team. Don't see it. Don't see anything that's going to prove me wrong yet. Could be, again, we don't know about injuries. We don't know things like that. All this is with a grain of salt, but see 2-10 with them. And if by year 3 that guy doesn't win at least 5 games, he's gone. If not already gone, because I don't know that they're going to really look any better than they did last year. Rutgers, 5-7. I just think their schedule is too tough to get to 6 or 7 wins. I mean, the losses that I've got them against, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, or Washington, Oregon, Illinois, Ohio State, Penn State, that seems pretty legit. The rest of the games, definitely see them winning those. UCLA, I have 5-7 as well. Getting games early, looking decent early, then they go on a pretty rough stretch because I have Penn State, Michigan State. I actually have them losing to Maryland because, again, I didn't want Maryland to go over in the conference. I just didn't. I wasn't seeing that happening. I just think there's enough talent there for them to win a game, and I think if it's going to happen, it's probably going to be UCLA. But losing at Indiana, I see them beating Nebraska at home, and I think you did too. Again, that's one of those Midwest teams going to the West Coast. It's a little more difficult. Definitely not winning at the shoe. They're not going to beat Washington in at home, and but I think they do beat USC at home. Well, on the road, but technically at home. Again, it's that border or in-state, in-town rivalry that anything can happen when you've got a team. I'm not sold on Lincoln Riley, and I'm not sold on USC as being that much better. With that said, USC I have at 7-5. I do have them beating Iowa just because Iowa typically does not play well going west. But losing to UCLA, you have Oregon, Nebraska, Notre Dame, and Illinois. Other than that, I think they have a pretty decent schedule. Michigan could be a toss-up, but it is at home. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt there. Washington I have at 7-5. Again, like you said, could be 8-4 because I had them losing against Washington State because it's at Washington State. Could very easily be the difference between their 7-5, 8-4 right there. I think the rest of this plays out pretty close, although I have them losing at Wisconsin and beating Illinois. So you could flip-flop those pretty easily too. But at Wisconsin, I think that's, again, it's a West Coast team going to the Midwest in November is a little more difficult. And then Wisconsin, I'm a little higher on Wisconsin than you are at 5-7. I think they're basically the same team as they are last year. But I agree, they have a brutal schedule. I think they do knock somebody off that just doesn't expect it because, Washington or Illinois, just because they're at home. But I agree with you. I think 5-7 is not good enough for them, and they'll be looking for a new coach. I also think that Maryland will be looking for a new coach at the end of the year. With the way things play out, Rutgers or Purdue possibly too. But I don't see Rutgers moving on from Schiano. I think he's pretty steady. I think they've got the ability to be 5-7, 7-5. But I think their schedule is just too difficult this year to be a 7-5 team.
We talked last year about the West Coast teams coming east in the month of November. And I was just writing down each one of those 4 new schools from the West Coast that joined the conference last year and where they play. I'll give you the latest that Oregon plays on anywhere beyond the West Coast is when they go to Iowa on November 8th. UCLA, the latest they go is they actually go to Ohio State on the 15th of November. That's the latest that any one of those 4 schools goes east of the West Coast, basically.
USC's latest is November 1st.
First against Nebraska, and then Washington's 11-8 against Wisconsin, at Wisconsin.
I think they're very, very lenient to the West Coast teams about allowing them to play each other late in the season.
Agreed.
I don't necessarily like that. They need to be able to. They need to come east and play some of these teams in a more harsh environment.
Yes.
Now, granted, like we talked last year, I think that's a little less of an issue nowadays with national recruiting. Got guys that have been playing in it anyway, going, guys from Ohio going to Oregon, or guys from Michigan going to Oregon, or guys from Florida going to Penn State.
Why don't you
different animal?
Why don't you sell that to Tennessee when they went to Ohio State?
Well, I'm not saying that it's not a factor. I'm just saying I think it's with the national recruiting, some of those teams that have more of a national base, it's a little less of an issue. Now, a team like an Iowa, let's say you put Iowa as a Texas team with their recruiting model that they have now, where it's basically regional. Well, now you're just pulling guys from the South who've only played in warmer weather. I think that makes it a little bit different. But when you've got a national name pulling from everywhere, I think it's less prominent. Again, when you've got teams like, is UCLA as national as it used to be? They're probably more localized. So that's probably going to hinder them more because it's guys that have played in warmer weather, Southern California guys that are from Vegas, from New Mexico, Arizona. That's probably their biggest recruiting base, and that's where they're pulling the most of their guys from. But USC, Oregon, those are national guys getting pulled from everywhere. So I think it's, you've got guys that have played in that weather in high school most of their lives, so maybe not as big of an issue. That's not to say it's not an issue.
I think it's a bigger issue than you think it is.
Yeah.
Especially when you've been
It's hard to tell when you don't have these teams playing in the colder weather like that.
Well, you've been practicing in Southern California in 80-degree weather for the last 4-6 months, and all of a sudden now you've got to travel to Wisconsin or Nebraska in November.
Or Penn State.
Sometimes Penn State. Sometimes the weather's great and they won't have a problem. But they run into those sleet games where it's cold, about 35 degrees, and it's sleeting, or even you get snow in the air and it's cold, and it doesn't feel the same hitting people with your pads as it does with people from Wisconsin who are hitting their own players in practice during the week. They know what it feels like. It's not the same. And I'm telling you, Tennessee did not show up last year against Ohio State. And the reason why is because it was cold and they didn't like it. Well, Ohio State's used to it, and they steamrolled Tennessee.
Well, but I also think Ohio State's a far more superior team than Tennessee was anyway.
Well, Tennessee wasn't a bad team. I wouldn't say that they were bad because they did make the playoff.
But
and they
you've
went
got
through a pretty decent SEC schedule too.
you got a team that ended up eventually winning the national championship
Yeah.
that steamrolled them, and they have the tendency to be able to make even really good teams look bad. So, I don't know how much I put into that, but
I know.
yeah,
So.
you're right. It does. I'm not saying it doesn't make a difference at all. I'm just saying I don't think it makes as much of a difference nowadays as it did 15, 20 years ago.
Well, that's where we'll disagree, I guess.
Well, that's what I've got.
Yeah, I don't have much else. I gotta get some puppies fed here pretty soon.
Yeah. So, well, I'd say on that we could probably move on to our closing here, and
Yeah, you guys want to pipe in if you think there's something on there that we are egregiously we've done wrong. If you see something that you say, oh, there's no way this team's going to beat that team in your schedule, the way you've got it set up, let us know. Let us know. I'd love to hear other thoughts, and if you can back it up with something that you want to, if you can argue your point, then I'd be more than happy to think differently.
and I think with me, I think some of it is more cautious optimism with some teams and wishful thinking on some games, just because of teams that I dislike and I want them to lose. So I'm going to just say I think they're going to lose, even though realistically it's probably not going to happen. But I think sometimes stranger things have happened, and you don't know about injuries. So I'm just going to speculate that certain guys may not be around at certain points of the year, and that's just a bad matchup for some teams or whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, if you disagree, that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to say that mine's by any means going to be right, because we showed that last year. That was definitely not the case last year either. So, yeah. So with that, just kind of drop us what you think, and if there's one that you just really egregiously stands out, let us know. Otherwise, we'll wrap that up and get out of here. And as always, check us out on our social media, and make sure to check out the merch store and buy some swag if you want it. Help support the team, and that's about it.
Did pick up 3 new subscribers this week.
Yeah,
so whoever those 3 are, I appreciate it. I appreciate all 52 of you. And if you've got friends that are on the fence, get them aboard. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It does help us out a little bit. If we were up there a little further, it'd help us out more. But at this point, anybody that wants to be a subscriber, absolutely. More than happy to have you. And thank you to those that are subscribers.
Absolutely. And if you were the 50th and you were the 50th, drop it in the comments. Let us know so we can shout you out in the next episode.
Yeah, if you want.
Yeah. So, all right. Let's get out of here on a Go Hawks and call it a day.
Sounds good. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.